This is an abridged version of my science nonfiction to be read list. Most of these books I don't own, but they're on my very, very long Goodreads to read list, and I thought that this was a good selection of the kind of things I'm going to get into. So it's definitely not definitive, it definitely doesn't cover all of the science books on my to read list, but it gives you an idea of just the many places that scientific nonfiction can go and the many places I am trying to go with it. I want to make a note here that I haven't read any of these books. They could be terrible. And in fact, if you have read them and they were a great concept but just were not well executed, please let me know down below and I can cross it off my list. Because I'm not interested in reading cool concepts written poorly in nonfiction. I'm a nonfiction snob and I want the quality of the writing to be awesome. I'm going to start with one that doesn't really need any explanation at all for why I want to read it, but it is Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World by Rachel Ignatowski. I think I said that right. I am always interested in more female scientists and women scientists. I think that there is a lot we learn in school that kind of glosses over or is not aware of or acknowledges the women scientists who have pioneered along. We all know who Marie Curie is, but we don't all know the other women who have worked in science throughout the ages. Sometimes it was hard for women to work in science because they weren't allowed the education or resources they needed to work in science. Sometimes it is still hard for women to work in science because of the way that they are treated by their coworkers and men and the respect they are or are not given. But despite the fact that I very much do not want to be a scientist because I am way too social, I think, to do research all day, I am really interested in this area and just seeing kind of through history what women were doing in science. So hopefully this is good. I have another book about women in science that is somewhere wrapped on this shelf as well. So when I get to that, I'll be very excited. The next book on my science TBR is The Gene, An Intimate History by Siddhartha Mukherjee. You guys don't have to tell me whether or not this is going to be good. I know it's going to be good because Siddhartha Mukherjee has written one of my favorite nonfiction books. When I heard he was coming out with another book, I was super excited about it. I really have wanted to read it since it was released, but it is also really long and just I know it's going to take a lot of dedication and attention to read it. And so one of these days I will probably pick up the audiobook because let's be honest, that's how I read Mukherjee's work. But until then, I am just hoping and listening and waiting. The next book that I want to read is one that was recommended to me by a friend. She and I often discuss the science nonfiction that we read or just science in general. The book she recommended to me was Acquainted with the Night, Excursions Through the World After Dark by Christopher Dewdney. This book sounds like it maybe could be along the lines of Mary Roach's work in that it's about a thing by being about all the little things that make up the thing. Apparently it's told in 12 chapters, and each chapter is a different aspect of something that we consider being connected to the night. My friend really recommended it. She said she was really skeptical and didn't think she would like it, but then she read it and really enjoyed it. And when a close friend of mine says that, it's definitely enough to get the book on my TBR. So I am excited to pick this up and see what I think and hopefully finish reading it, but I don't know when I'm going to get to that. The next science nonfiction on my TBR is The Hot Zone, The Terrifying True. Nonfiction often has subtitles, by the way, because they have to have like the catchy title to sell you, and then they have to have the subtitle to tell you what it's really about. This book is The Hot Zone, The Terrifying True Story of the Origins of the Ebola Virus by Richard Preston. I had heard about this book long before the more recent Ebola outbreaks, but of course that made me even more interested in reading it. I have also heard some criticism of the book more recently and whether or not it's really towing a true and accurate picture. The book is supposed to be about one of the first documented Ebola outbreaks and kind of the science around containing that and figuring out what it was. And I have heard that it's not wholly accurate. And so I want to make a note here that I think is important anytime you're reading nonfiction, but particularly when you're reading science nonfiction or historical nonfiction, that it is important not just to read the book, but to also be aware of any criticism that might exist about the book and any criticism that might exist about the author. Sometimes in science and historical nonfiction, there are controversies where a book is considered to be bad science, like poorly written and like misleading, or a historical book, maybe historical nonfiction is not actually well researched. So it's important to kind of look at the person writing the book. Is this a person who is well regarded in their field? Is this a person with the authority to write this book? And then are there any criticisms out there of this book and its content from other people who have a position of expertise in this area? So I'm still thinking that I'm going to read The Hot Zone, but I'm definitely going to also read some of the critiques that people have written about it. The next book is one that might be kind of dry, but I think it's important for me to read for my career, and that is The Visual Display of Quantitative Information by Edward Tufte. This is like the classic, like, foundational text about how to graph, basically, and how to have different types of graphs that quickly convey information. If you guys don't know, I'm a data analyst and I would like someday to be a data scientist, and a lot of what I end up doing is taking numbers and spreadsheets full of data and trying to translate it into something that's quickly and easily digestible by my superiors or by the company as a whole, and often that involves graphs and graphing. And so I want to read this book so I can be better at my job, basically. That's one of the fun things about nonfiction. Sometimes there's nonfiction that makes you better at what you do. Anyway, again, as I mentioned, this is not a comprehensive list of all of the science books on my TBR, but this is definitely some of the things that I'm hoping to get to. Let me know down below if you've read any of these and think that they're not worth my time, or if you have anything I should add to my TBR, although, guys, it's so long already. But let's be real, I can always add more science nonfiction. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please check out my recommendation videos for science nonfiction. Really love nonfiction, and I really want people to read more of it, and I would love to talk about it more here on BookTube. And most of all, I hope you read a little bit more nonfiction this month than you normally do. Bye!